Welcome, everybody. This is the Rotary E-Club of Silicon Valley. Every week, we bring you stories of people who are making a difference in the lives of others around the world, making that difference locally, globally, and digitally. We're part of Rotary International, 1.4 million Rotarians and Rotaractors who are part of clubs. There's 36,000 plus Rotary clubs, and we're one of them. Matter of fact, ours is a little different in that it's online and asynchronous, which is, we think, quite interesting, especially because it allows us to connect with people all over the world doing really interesting things. Our guest today, JP, is the LL in your name pronounced like an L or a Y?
An L.
Yeah. JP Pullos, all right, who is with an organization called 100 Cameras. And you saw earlier in this meeting the inspirational video, 100 Cameras, flagship, Conky. This is part of the story of what they tell. If you are watching this video without having seen that video, then by all means, go on our website, go up the page, back to the inspirational video, or on our YouTube page, click on the link below, and then after watching it, come back, and that will work just fine. So with that, I'd like to introduce our speaker, all right, JP, who is not merely a teacher of photographer, but a guy who has engaged in all sorts of interesting service in a lot of different places in the world. And I think this story about the power of photography to do much more than just share a picture is something that will appeal. JP, it is such a pleasure to have you as a part of the Rotary E-Club of Silicon Valley, and I happily hand the mic over to you.
Thank you so much. Just such a pleasure to be here with everyone here right now and everyone who's going to watch in the future. Just have been very excited about this presentation for some time. I'm going to share my screen here. Hopefully all of the tech works. And I want to start a little bit before I say, good, I got the thumbs up there. That's good. Before I say a little bit about myself, I do want to say a little bit about 100 Cameras first, the organization that I'm here representing and wanting to share about. So 100 Cameras was founded in 2008, and I came on board in 2012 as a volunteer. In fact, we were all volunteer until 2019, and I'll talk about some of the developments with our organization that made it possible for us to start to have employees, of which I am now one. And one of the great things about our organization that I like to share is that the five people who spent the most time volunteering in those years prior to 2019, all five of us are now employed by 100 Cameras, which is pretty great, something that we're very proud of. So where 100 Cameras started was with the question that you see on this slide, which is, what if young people could tell their own stories and choose how their stories are shared with the world? Not only be the authors of those stories, but also have a say in how those stories are told. And I don't think when the four women who founded 100 Cameras, when they anticipated or imagined what was going to come for this organization, I can tell you with a great deal of certainty, because I've heard it from them, they had no idea that this would really take off in the way that it has. So when this question was first asked, it was really just about one program that was in the works. But now that we've grown and we've seen the impact of the curriculum, which I'll be talking about a little bit more in just a moment, we've really been able to identify a problem that is articulated well in these 5 points. I won't read all of the text. I know y'all can read what's there, but I'll just summarize it. Language is limited. There's many ways to access what I'll be talking about, social emotional learning in a little bit, but language can only get us so far there. Students feeling alone. This was already true before the pandemic, even more so now. Feelings are going unexpressed. Collaboration suffers. That's all about the students. And then we also have a focus on our education systems. And when I talk about education systems, I'm primarily have in mind here in the United States, but we do programs, in fact, about 50% of them worldwide. So I focus in my mind sometimes on the United States and the education strain there, because I'm here and I have children who are in my life and I know what they're going through, but this is also a worldwide phenomenon. This is the problem we're looking to solve. I'm going to also have a solution slide here just a little bit down the line, but I want to walk you through what our curriculum looks like and what the experience of it actually is. So I hope at this point you've all seen the video about our program in Iraq. I want to walk you through another program and show you some images from another program. This was a program that happened in Chicago, and this was actually the same year as the Iraq program in 2019. These are a selection of 10 of the 25 students who participated in the South Lawndale neighborhood of Chicago. This program was a turning point, a milestone for us as an organization, because we had a corporate sponsor for this program, which was Apple. And that was, for us, a very big deal. What up until then had been, as I said, a primarily volunteer-run organization. We were, for the first time, partnering with, at that point, the largest company in the world. And Apple wanted to have us focus on young people whose families had been impacted by gun violence. And so that's how this school was chosen. That's how this neighborhood was chosen. That's how these students were chosen. And so our program consists really, if you were to boil it down, into three activities, let's say, or different things that the students are engaged in. Oh, I included this picture because one of the amazing things about this program is that these students were some of the first humans in the world to receive new iPhone 11s, courtesy of Apple. So as you can imagine, there was a lot of excitement in the room when they received those. So our curriculum includes conversations about photography, about the lives of these students. It includes writing exercises. And as you can imagine, the biggest thing that we look at here is, or the biggest thing that I focus on, certainly I have a background in photography education, is the photography piece. So the students are taking pictures. That's clearly a big part of what our programs are all about. So I'm just going to cycle through some of the images that were created in this program, the Chicago program. I'm just going to walk you through the arc of the curriculum. So we start with having these students be looking at slideshows of images that were taken by kids their age from all around the world. And what they're getting out of that experience is getting that they're a part of a larger creative community with kids that are their age, that an image can show different feelings and different emotions. And one image looked at by two different people could have, two different reactions. In fact, shown to 10 people could have 10 different reactions. So in the first part of the program, the first half of the program, they're really getting this sense that photography can be a medium for communicating feelings, emotions, and stories. But they're not yet talking about themselves. We're sort of easing them into that idea. And at about the midway part of the program, we're starting to ask them questions about themselves. Whether it's us teaching or a teacher teaching. Often, in fact, most of our programs are taught by local educators, not by us. This program just happened to be taught by us, but most of our programs aren't. And so whoever's teaching the program is asking them about their interests, about their hobbies, about their families, and how they would represent all of those different aspects of what they consider their identity, their lives, through photography. And that then leads to the final, I would say, 25% of the program, where the students are solidly engaged in conversations about the highs and lows of their life, experiences they've had, things they've been through. And while none of the students are ever required to verbally share about these things, they are invited to if they want to. They can also just write about those experiences if they want to. And in fact, they don't have to write or speak about any of them. But we do know that all students going through this program do think about the questions that are posed, and they are able to then take those life experiences and life stories and feelings and emotions and think about the way they want to communicate those through photography. Whenever I'm going through a program's images, I always find the images where one student is taking a portrait of another to be the most powerful. This tends to come at the end of the program. They've already connected through the shared experience of most of the students sharing about experiences that they've had in their lives. And there's been a real safe space. We call it a container, actually, a safe space that is created in each of these classrooms where these programs happen, where, you know, a lot of kids are really uncomfortable having their picture taken. But in our programs, by the time we get to the portion lesson of the program, they are really into the idea of not only having a say in how they take pictures of each other, but then how their own picture is taken by another student. And so I want to get to this, our solution slide, which is a match for the problem slide that we started with. And this is our solution, what we say it is. And again, I won't read all of the text here, but to summarize, photography is a new access. It's not the only one, certainly. We think it's a pretty extraordinary one, but it's not the only one. Students get they're not alone. Feelings are shared. Connections are made. And again, that side note, or it's not a side note, but it's a kind of a distinct place that we look for how to support the education system is making sure that teachers, schools, districts are, that we're supporting them as much as possible. I want to mention that we are a very data-driven organization. We're big believers in data. And I wanted to, we have both pre and post-course surveys for all of our programs. And that data, we look to see what the patterns are, where we can be improving the program, where we can be evolving it. I wanted to mention 3 impact highlights here. I will let you read those quickly. I'll just give a moment for that. And I think that does point to that I would say our programs are 51% social emotional learning and 49% photography, if I can put it that way. And one last piece here that I want to mention is that while we are very proud of the curriculum in terms of the impact that it makes, and we know that it's making a big difference in the lives of students and teachers, there is a final piece here that we haven't talked about, which is we are committed to uplifting and amplifying the voices of students. And so I mentioned Apple for the Chicago program, and we are big believers in partnerships in all kinds of different ways. We partner with nonprofits, schools and nonprofits and NGOs whenever a program of ours happens. We don't ever do it just ourselves. There's always a nonprofit partner. We also believe in corporate partnerships, and particularly why we're big fans of these is because it is a vehicle for us to be able to uplift and amplify. And so here we've got some of the ways that Apple was able to uplift and amplify the stories of the students that participated in the program in Chicago. This is another one of our corporate sponsors, Framebridge, who really took the content that was created by the students and some of the behind the scenes images, and were able to roll out an entire campaign over the course of 2 years around these programs. This is just examples, excuse me one second, I think I need a sip of water here. Examples of different coverage that we've gotten in the press, which is we're always looking to uplift in that way. And then the last slide here, 2 initiatives that we've taken on. Adobe Stock is now including student images of ours, and also a recent story in Departures magazine that included the student images as well. And I will mention that Departures magazine paid for those images just like professional photographers had taken them. And oh, that is my timer reminding me to stop there. And that money went to the school that participated in that program. And that is all. Yeah, I know I throw a lot out there. Happy to answer any questions and clarify anything I can.
All right, JP, fantastic stuff. I'm sure the questions are going to come rather fast and furious. But before we do, let me quickly introduce the people we have on the recording. Here in the Bay Area in Walnut Creek is Shags Shagrin of the Rotary Club of Silicon Valley. Currently in Tokyo, but usually from Brockville, Ontario, is Chris Cochran of the District 7040 Rotary Passport Club. My name is Rushton Hurley. I am the programs chair for the Rotary Club of Silicon Valley. And let's dive into some questions. So JP, exciting stuff. You see so much talent in what the students produce. And clearly there is this value to telling the story of 100 cameras through what they've created. So by being able to go to organizations, companies that might sponsor you, things like this, you can say, take a look at what these kids have done. I'd like you to actually talk a little bit about, if you can, the work of getting people to come on board the idea before you had those pictures, right? How do you get an initiative started when it's just an idea and before you have something to show? I know a lot of people out there are people who are trying to get a business going or get an organization going, and often people are like, well, can you give me examples? Not yet. I don't have it yet. Can you talk a little bit about how that works with 100 cameras?
Yeah, I have to say, one of the things that we, our story, like I think so many stories of organizations that have grown as we have, is the mix of hard work and luck. And where I would say the luck has come in one way, there are a number of ways, but one of them is us being an image-focused organization has been huge. So the first program, and I said this again, I'll reiterate or I'll repeat myself here, but there was only, the intention at the beginning was only to do one program. There was no, let's start a nonprofit. It was just, let's take some cameras. The first program was in Sudan, actually, what is now South Sudan. And I will say those images that came out of South Sudan, I think there were 8 students, if I'm not mistaken, who participated. Those images that came out of Sudan carried us through a number of years. Images are just extraordinarily powerful. I'm talking right now with an organization and doing a little bit of consulting with them. They're actually, speaking of video, they're looking to do something distinct from what we do, but similar enough that I can be sort of advising them a bit. And they're looking to do the same thing with video, actually here in New York City at schools. And I think they're going to have an easy road ahead, because already, even the first program isn't even complete, and they've already got some amazing video footage there. So I'm not sure this would be my kind of saying this would be applicable across the board for people looking to start organizations, but certainly if there is any opportunity to document, to take pictures. I know in the moment when you're running programs like this, it can seem like a lower priority, but no matter what your program is, if you can have somebody, especially a talented photographer who might be able to donate their time to get some images, that's always really, really helpful.
So in thinking about how images tell stories, one of the questions that comes to mind for me is both, what does the picture say in and of itself, but also what kind of captions do the photographers want to apply? Is talking about writing and describing pictures or processes or feelings related to that, is that I would assume that's at some level an integral part of the instruction of the program. But can you tell us more about the details?
Yeah, so in fact, at one point in our program, we have a handout that the teacher gives the students, which is just a list of feelings and emotions. And that then becomes a reference for them to be able to have a conversation, do some writing exercises. That comes about halfway through the program. And so that's one example. And I'll say, actually, I'll mention this has been one of the most interesting things that I've encountered as in being a part of 100 Cameras is experiencing and hearing about how different cultures around the world talk about feelings and emotions, are more open to talking about them, or less open to talking about them. And even the cultures, the environments, the neighborhoods, the communities where the program happens, where young people might be less inclined to talk about their feelings and emotions, it doesn't dull the impact of the program. In fact, to me, it almost sort of makes it more meaningful, because they are finding the words, they are finding that there's space for them to be able to actually articulate some of those things that other cultures might just take for granted. So conversations about feelings and emotions just very directly. That is happening. And we're always, whether it's us teaching or a teacher, local teacher teaching, always connecting the two. So it's showing an image. What feeling is this bringing up for you? You know, that's the starting point. And then there's more sort of complex conversations as well. Does that give you a sense, Rushton? Did that?
It does. It does.
Yeah.
It does. And as you mentioned, teachers toward the end there, that kind of leads into a question that came in through the chat. Your teachers, are they teachers who have learned the basics of photography, or are they pro photographers who give based on their experience, or both?
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked that. Actually, it's actually a misconception often about our teachers, which is it's often assumed that you need some kind of photography background. And in fact, over 90% of our teachers who teach our programs have no photography experience at all. So none are required. We have well, two things. One is we have a robust training program for teachers. So anything they could possibly want to know, we're able to set them up for success. So that's number one. But number two, even if that robust training program wasn't in place, I don't know that most teachers or educators, or, you know, sometimes we have school psychologists, school counselors teaching this program. So it's not always, specifically teachers. And I think any adult could take this curriculum and run with it because what we're teaching is beginner photography skills, and the adult can learn right alongside the students. So they don't need to necessarily have any pre-existing knowledge. We're really setting them up with everything they need to teach.
All right. So how did things change when you shifted to the project in Chicago, and suddenly you've got these backers, right, in Apple, who are providing, you know, these very sophisticated devices? Did that change how you approach the project at all?
Well, in terms of the curriculum, nothing there, but certainly some logistical things shifted. So up until that point, we had one, I mean, no disrespect to our corporate sponsor prior to Apple, but our corporate sponsor prior to Apple was a teeny tiny company as compared to Apple, which probably would apply to 90%, 99% of companies. Right. So we had a camera accessories company. Their name was Joby at the time. It's Videndum. We still work with them. They're amazing. We love them. And when Apple came along, it was like, as compared to that experience, it was like the big leagues. I mean, we were very nervous about it. It was, you know, we were working with Apple's marketing team. And so first of all, what that shifted is, as you can imagine, we, you know, corporate sponsorship, partnerships, I should say, with Adobe, FrameBridge, all of those came really quickly after the Apple sponsorship. And if I can say it this way, we were making a lot of phone calls that weren't returned. And then all of a sudden, you know, it was sort of the reverse, and we were getting a lot of phone calls and trying to return as many as possible. So Apple, you know, really did just kind of launch us into the stratosphere as far as corporate partnerships. It also, I have to say, although we didn't realize it at the time because we didn't have this problem at the time, it also really opened up our minds to working with phones. Because up until that point, you know, we were very much about, nope, only cameras, we're not doing phones. And that program was a success. You saw images taken from that program that were all taken on phones. And while most of our programs still do use cameras, we like the point and shoots. They fit in a pocket. That's safer that way for the camera and sometimes even the student. But it opened us up to the idea where, let's say there's a school that can't afford, you know, can afford the program, or maybe they've found some way to fund the program through fundraising or what have you, or maybe we have found funding through a corporate sponsor, a number of different ways that happens. But let's say they just can't afford the equipment. Well, if the students do, and they don't always, but if they do have their own smartphones, we do offer that as an option for the school to take advantage of. Because that can be a solution. And we are looking for this program to be accessible to all students. So it opened our minds up in that regard, certainly.
Nice. Now, thinking about the story from Iraq, right, and the devices you use, the point and shoot cameras, there's there's the cameras, right? There are the notebooks, but then there are also, those things that will allow the program to keep going even after you leave. Can you tell us a little bit about how you work to make a 100 cameras project sustainable in the spaces where you're looking to help the people who are there?
Yeah, so the first thing I'll mention is just in terms of the cameras, we don't ever take cameras back. So those cameras always stay in the community at the very least. And most often the students are keeping their cameras. So that's piece number one. We have programs happen in places where for a wide spectrum of access to the internet, access to computers, and even sometimes access to electricity. So we're being responsible about how we then set up those students to have access to whatever tools they might need moving forward. At the very least, what we have had in all of our programs is that there is at least one computer in that school or community center or where the students would have either access specifically to that computer or access to an adult who has access to that computer at the very least. And that computer has at least some internet connection at some points during a typical week, so that while it might take longer for those students to be able to, see their images on a computer screen and be able to do anything with them if they want to, we make sure that at least that functionality is there for them. I don't think we've ever worked with a school or community center that didn't have at least that sort of bare bones setup. And then we've also worked with schools that have a lot more in terms of access, where they might have, a computer for every student. And, in those cases, they're set up and often know more about how to manage all of that than, us. It's like the students are teaching us how to use the computer sometimes. So.
Well, let's build on that for kind of the final question before we finish the recording. And that has to do with what the students teach you. I think we find in creative programs that one of the really special pieces of it is that a student will come up with some kind of insight or do something really, really, distinctive, unusual, non-conventional that allow the people who are kind of steeped in the professionalism of the effort to go, wow. So can you talk about one or more stories where the kids in a particular setting did something that was just totally unexpected and taught you something really interesting about how you think about photography?
Yeah, 100%. So prior to, and while I was volunteering with 100 Cameras and prior to being a staff member with 100 Cameras, I was teaching a lot of group classes for adults here in New York City. By and large, angsty group of people, type A, just wanting to learn a lot. And so my background in education was very much this kind of, hold on one quick second. There's a loud noise starting. Hold on one second. I know the recording's happening. One moment. Okay, if I didn't turn that off, that would have been a loud noise for all of us. So the students, as I was starting to teach students, I saw a very different approach to learning. And so my first program that I taught with 100 Cameras was in India. And this was a group of 15 students in Madurai, India, southeast of India. And they these 15 students had never touched a phone, had never touched a camera before. And there was also a language barrier. So they spoke Tamil, if I'm remembering correctly. I speak English. I do not speak Tamil. They don't speak English. And so I was, on days we did not have a translator, I was teaching mostly through charades, really, pointing at things and saying words that they weren't understanding. These kids learned how to use their aperture and shutter speed, which are pretty relatively complicated concepts, in less than 4 hours of using these cameras. And they got to the point where we had 2 professional photographers on that program. It was myself, a photographer who was with us, humanitarian photographer named Gigi. And those students were showing us functions on the camera that we didn't know existed on those models because they were sheer play, no limitations, no preconceived notions about how difficult photography is or anything like that. And what that's brought into, speaking for myself, what that's brought into my teaching of adults on actually any subject, not just photography, is I find that when I'm teaching adults on any subject, I very much invite them to embody the outlook of a child when they're learning, because I find that can break down those limitations for them.
I love that. We'll wind things down with recording, and then, as we always like to do, we'll hand it back to our speaker for the final word. But those of you who are visiting us, thank you for doing so. I hope that you are finding in this and the other recordings that we share with the world a lot of inspiration, different ideas about how you might be able to make a difference in your communities, and that you'll tell us that you are here. If you scroll down the page just a little bit, there is an attendance form, and we love getting to hear from different people. That's one of the ways to do it. If you are a Rotarian who has perfect attendance, like Shags, who's decades into perfect attendance at this point, and you need a note from your secretary for your secretary to make up a missed meeting at your own club. That's by carefully typing in your email address, you'll successfully do that. Additionally, there is the discuss form at the bottom of the SiliconValleyRotary.com page, and there you can share thoughts on this program and on other elements of the meeting, or respond to what other people have put. We love when people will share what really strikes them as fascinating, the thoughts that kind of came to mind as a function of what they've seen or read as part of our meetings, and we encourage you to do so for sure. JP, as I mentioned, we always like to hand it back to our speaker for the final word. What would you like to have clearly in people's heads as they finish viewing this recording?
Thank you. Well, thank you for having me, first of all. Thank you for having us, 100 Cameras. I'll mention that research has shown that when students' voices are uplifted and amplified, they're statistically more likely to opt into their communities. And that's what we're all about, causing that they opt in, that they participate in their communities, and become leaders in their communities. So we hope you'll check out our website, 100cameras.org. And if you are interested in becoming involved, please reach out to us. We'd love to have more conversations.
Sounds good. And thank you again. And everyone, we will see you next week.